It began with a weather forecast barely worth noticing. The storm was predicted to pass us by, just a brief disturbance. But that evening, Mr. Callahan summoned us for an impromptu meeting to finalize the quarterly reports before our major client pitch. I should have declined, gone home, and lost myself in my latest mystery novel. But responsibility won out, and saying no to Mr. Callahan was never easy. Not because he was intimidating, though he could be, but because there was something about him I couldn't quite grasp. Mr. Callahan was a paradox. A strict perfectionist with a soft spot for stray animals, a stern presence softened occasionally by a boyish grin. At 54, he carried an air of composed authority that commanded attention. I often wondered about his life beyond the office. Did he have a family? Hobbies? Secrets? He guarded his personal life closely, and I had long accepted that he was a puzzle I might never solve. By the time the meeting ended, the storm had arrived in full fury. Rain hammered against the office windows, and thunder rumbled, shaking the walls. "You shouldn't drive in this," he said, eyeing the storm. "Let me give you a ride." "I'll be fine," I replied, though I wasn't certain. My little sedan wasn't built for this kind of weather. "Humor me, Grace," he said firmly, leaving no room for argument. Against my better judgment, I climbed into his sleek SUV, the scent of leather and his subtle cologne filling the space. The roads were treacherous, streetlights flickering and water pooling across the asphalt. We hadn't gone far when a fallen tree blocked our path. "Looks like we're taking the scenic route," he muttered, turning down a narrow back road. The rain intensified, visibility shrinking to almost nothing. Then, a sudden jolt, a sickening crunch, and the SUV groaned to a stop. He stepped out, umbrella in hand, to assess the damage. When he returned, his expression was grim. "Flat tire, and the spare's useless. We're stuck." The storm showed no mercy, and we were miles from town with no cell service. "There's an old lodge not far from here," he said. "It belonged to my grandparents. We'll wait out the storm there." The trek through the rain felt surreal. The world shrank to the circle of light from his flashlight and the slosh of water around our feet. The lodge emerged from the darkness like a forgotten relic, weathered beams, moss-laden roof, and an air of abandoned history. Inside, it smelled of aged wood and lingering cedar. He lit a few candles, their glow casting dancing shadows across the room. "It's not much, but it'll do," he said, hanging his soaked coat by the door. We settled by the fireplace, where he coaxed a reluctant flame to life. Sitting on an old quilt, I sipped the coffee he'd miraculously found in the pantry. Outside, the storm roared, but within these walls, it was still and intimate. "I haven't been here in years," he admitted quietly. "My grandparents passed when I was in college. Always meant to come back, but never did." I sensed there was more he wanted to say. "They must have been proud of you." For the first time, his composed mask slipped. "They were good people. Taught me about resilience, hard work. But sometimes I wonder if they'd be disappointed. All work, no balance." His honesty caught me off guard. "You're not alone. Sometimes I feel like I'm drifting, waiting for life to happen instead of making it happen." For a moment, we were just two people. Not boss and employee, but equals quietly sharing vulnerabilities. The tension between us softened into something deeper. Morning came, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. Mr. Callahan stood by the fireplace, coffee in hand, looking different, less the authoritative figure and more a man burdened by his own thoughts. "Morning," he said, his voice warmer than I had ever heard. "Coffee." I joined him by the window, watching the world washed clean by the rain. The air felt like a fresh start. "Last night was unexpected," he said after a pause. "But maybe it was what I needed, what we both needed." I looked at him, truly looked. Maybe it's a reminder that life isn't just deadlines and reports. Sometimes it's about moments like this. He smiled, and for once, it reached his eyes. "I think you're right, Grace." The drive back was quieter, but comfortable. A silence filled with unspoken understanding. When we finally parted ways, I knew something had shifted, not just between us, but within me. Life returned to its usual rhythm, but I held on to that night. It reminded me to look beyond the surface, to welcome the unexpected, and to find meaning in the moments that catch us by surprise. And as for Mr. Callahan, the next time he called a late-night meeting, I didn't mind staying late.